Hi, I'm Dan, and I got some notes. And I was going to read a quote off my phone, but I wrote it down so you guys don't think I'm like just checking my messages and stuff. So anyways, yeah, like you said, I've been into fashion for a while. I do lots of other kind of art, but yeah, started out with Omaha Fashion Week, kind of got me on the path, and gives me deadlines. And then finding audiences other places, especially LA and Hollywood and stuff. So I don't know, a lot of creative things happening. And so my main idea I wanted to talk about was in the vein of symmetry. I think everybody in their creative practice, you have times when you're not making stuff, right? And you're kind of sitting around watching YouTube or Netflix or whatever and thinking, I need to be in the studio. I'm getting down on yourself for that stuff. But I found, because I know I've gotten down on myself for not working when I have things I need to be doing. I have a list of things I should be doing all this, but what am I doing here? Playing guitar or something. It's like, and I'm realizing in those moments when you're not working on your, project, your subconscious is actually processing and working on it and getting ready for it. And I found through experience that when the time comes, you'll be ready and your work will be done and you'll be ready to work. And so it's in a sense you have to trust your subconscious to be doing that work. And in turn, I believe your subconscious is trusting you to do the work when the time comes. And so I've realized this and kind of applied it to my creative process. And it's almost like you feel like you can visualize these blocks of work coming at you, and in between the blocks of work is empty space, and then they hit you and you work, and then you have empty space. And then sometimes you really feel like, I haven't done a lot of work in a month. I must be getting ready for some big project, you know what I mean? And the fact is, it's true. And then the project hits you, and it's every time it's I'm gonna die. I don't know how I'm gonna finish this. This project is literally kind of killing me. I mean, you feel that way, but it's but then you realize in those moments, this is what it takes this is what I've been reading about people who are actually doing this. It's this takes everything out of you, and you realize I can do it. I'm going to do it. And then you do it, and then you remember that experience for the next time, and then you realize, well, I'm probably going to have this period of just nothing happening, and it's like a cycle. And I see the symmetry in that of focused, conscious working and kind of unconscious or subconscious working. But I find that it's really important to have things that you enjoy doing, that you don't have a lot of stake in. I don't care what people think about this. I kind of care, at this moment, I care about what people think of the fashion I make and stuff like that. I have peers that I want to get good feedback from and stuff. But I think you should always have something that's it nurtures your soul just as much, but you don't care, And for me, that's I found it's playing music, playing guitar and making music on electronic stuff, I find that just the process and just the experience, it complements my work that I really have a lot in stake. So that's I guess that's kind of what would you call it, suggestion I would have is find things that you just don't care what anybody thinks about it, and just do those. And a lot of times that starts you on the path of doing the thing that you should be doing. It's different for everybody. A lot of this is relatively recent realization for me. And things always like reinforce your realization sometimes. And like from out of nowhere, I read this like quote from Ernest Hemingway, and that's the quote I wrote down. And in the article, it says, Hemingway says, never think about the story you're working on before you begin your next day of work. And the actual quote is, that way your subconscious will work on it all the time. But if you think about it consciously or worry about it, you'll kill it, and your brain will be tired before you start. And the thing he liked to do a lot was read. I didn't realize that. So he would have a project he's working on. He's like, man, I'm going to just read for a while and do something I enjoy, knowing that your brain is working on these things, and like trusting yourself and trusting your subconscious to make it happen. And that is kind of like the main thrust of what I was talking about today. I wanted to just give you some examples of how I applied that, and like solving problems, solving solutions. It's like daydreaming, you know what I mean? I read another article which was talking about like brainwave activity, and they found like when people are daydreaming or just like not thinking about anything, your brain is working far more than when you're actually like focusing on solving a problem, which is amazing to me because I totally believe that as well. And it's almost like I've discovered like really recently, and I actually had this experience just like last week where I realized it was like lucid daydreaming. There's a difference, and I'm like, you know when you dream and you realize you're dreaming and you kind of direct the path of the dream, but you're still sleeping? I realize you can do that with daydreams too, where you're not really engaged, but you can still kind of like, direct that flow. And an example is like if you have a problem that, you know, is in the back of your mind, you can, it's almost like running simulations of like, okay, this, no, this, okay, that's not gonna work, this, you know, and I realize that sounds kind of like you're working on your problem, but really you're just kind of like daydreaming about it. You're not really focused on it. And another example would be where, you know, you met somebody and like the next day you're like, I can't remember that person's name at all. You're just concentrating on it, like the name, and then you just forget about it. And then like an hour later, it's like out of nowhere, you're like, whoa, okay, I remember the name. You know, and it's like just pops in your head. It's like, I wasn't even thinking about it. You know, that's another example of what I'm talking about, of how your subconscious works for you. It's really kind of amazing. And it also for me, lifts a weight off my shoulders, like I said earlier, when you're getting down on yourself and you're like just so, you can start to get depressed when you're not working on a project that you know you need to do because you just have to. And then when you realize what's happening and you kind of like understand, it really kind of like, in one sense, it will lift your spirits up, and in another sense, it will like actually help you get in the studio too, you know. And another advice I always give myself is, and this is something I learned from, I forgot, I mean, I know it's this Japanese concept, and there's a word for it, but I forgot the word, which I'll probably remember after this is over. But it's almost the sense of like, give yourself 1 minute. Just do this project. You know you have to do the project. Just say, I'm going to do it for 1 minute. And everybody can do that. And sometimes you'll do it, and I have done this, where it's like, oh, that took everything out of me. My minute's up. I'm out. But a lot of times, it's like, okay, that's your first step, and then you just keep going. And that's how your kind of subconscious activities can like merge into your conscious work. And I was going to start with my personal examples with that. And then my second example was how I solved the symmetry problem with this symmetry of conscious, subconscious. So one of my things I like to do when I'm like, just, you know, those times when you're like, I need to be doing this, but I'm going to do this, is I do this like line drawing that I just started to do, and I seriously don't even care about it. the thing I like to do is the act of just putting these lines down, and just, I don't even think it's really art, you know? It's like, because I personally, have a background in like doing things kind of traditionally. I really like doing like portraits and painting figurative things, but so I started doing this, and I started doing a lot, and like filling up a journal with it, and realizing as I'm doing this, I'm like processing things, you know? I feel it work, I feel it happening, you know? I'm not just thinking or solving these problems, these design problems, but processing my own stuff, you know what I mean? Just, everybody's got stuff they have to deal with. And I personally, I just feel it happening as I'm doing this. And it's almost like this kind of like release, you know, and releasing means it's just like going out. There's one of the line works. This is like right out of my journal. I took this with my phone, so the lighting's bad. This is when I was first realizing it, and so I like just snapped a picture and like put it on Instagram and like doing these drawings. And then this was a time when I was like really close to like, I need to be working on this, the deadline's coming up, and seriously, I would spend hours doing these drawings. I'm like, oh my gosh. But like, okay, yeah, I have I was gonna explain how this worked, but I remember I put this little like sped up motion video you'll see later of this happening. So, okay, back to my story. I really needed to work on this project. I needed to develop a whole kind of like story for this collection and everything. And I guess I should tell you, I also like really am into like designing my own fabric and stuff. And I don't want to get too into that. But so I was trying to figure out how to incorporate this practice in with my like work. And so I was like, you know what, I can make this be like a print, you know? And so here is me doing this on a bigger scale. That first was just a journal, and this is like 4 feet wide by 8 feet long, making this big kind of bolt of fabric. Doing this, there's a process involved in this. There's layers, there's a tiny layer of silicone that you draw on, and you put on some mesh, and you put another layer on. It's like a printmaking process. And then you kind of like just peel it all off, and then you make clothes with it. But so here's the translation of that journal work into my kind of like real life work. And you never realize how hard it is to push the button correctly until you do it in front of a lot of people. And like, oh, there it goes. Okay, and so this is like the start of that. And so you can see it's just like drawing one line after the other. And it's really kind of like meditative. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, I'm doing this, I'm processing this, but I'm also getting something done at the same time. You know, and oh yeah, I was trying to not block this. Is that cool? Was I making that buzzing noise? Awesome. No, it reminds me of being at school where, you know, you have feedback and stuff. But yeah, and so this is like my first attempt at incorporating what I'm talking about with, like I said, I didn't realize how long this video was. It's only a minute, but when you're trying to wait for it to get done, there it's done. And so, okay, there it is, like completely done in my studio, and here it is, like on a dress, and I totally skipped that. And so, anyways, and this is just a video I shot when we do these kind of times where they check our work before, you know, we do a little photo shoot and stuff. So the top is a different process, but the bottom, the skirt is exactly what you saw on that table, and that's how it translated. So yeah, I'll go on to the next. And these are some shots. Man, you can't really tell, but this is a bunch of work done with like gold on brown, and then, yeah, you can just skip through, and then, yeah, and these were all when I showed this collection in LA. And so just giving an example of how that actually came from way over here where I'm not even thinking about it to way over here where, okay, project's done and I'm showing. And then, yeah, this is my first, I'm gonna talk about this real quick. So my next problem was how to create an actual symmetrical thing. And so as far as like design on a dress. And with this process, my process was actually sculpting the dress in clay basically, and then making a mold of that, and then casting it in my process where it's like super thin. I mean, that's what this is here. That's this baby stage. And so to get that, I was like, how am I going to get this to be symmetrical? Because I don't want to just freehand this. And so basically, I just wrapped, okay, the first step was I covered the dress form in clay. Then I kind of wrapped it with packing tape. And I drew the design on one side, and then cut it in half, turned it inside out, put it on the other side, and then like, how am I going to incise this or whatever? So I was poking holes to like make the design on their side, taking it forever. So I took an X-Acto knife and was cutting that out. It was a lot of work, and it was like not fun at all. And but that's the kind of the end result. It's not perfect, but I wanted to get this complexity of symmetry going on. And I feel like, you know, in the end, it turned out okay, but it wasn't quite what I was wanting to do as far as the process goes. And it was really old school process. And so the thing that popped into my head when I wasn't thinking about it was possibly like using a projector, because I remember hearing about, because my brother has like a laser projector, and those things, you know, you don't have to focus them. Everything's in focus no matter where you are. And so what I did was I drew my design, which was this one. Sorry, I'll get away from them. I drew that design and flat, obviously, and then you know, scanned it and put it on a file so you can stick it in the projector, and then covered you know, the dress form with clay and projected it on there and drew on, you know, like kind of tracing that projection and getting that thing symmetrical, which was so much easier than the other way, because here I am, I can draw it in Photoshop and then just like, you know, mirror it on one side or the other. And then it's like using current technology instead of using this other method, which was like technology from, you know, whenever. And so, yeah, I guess we can progress through. Thank you. So that's the back. And then the next one is a close-up. And then, and then this is the newer one where I just like covered that dress form in clay. And that's a whole nother process that I figured out how to do with just kind of like randomly thinking. And then you'll see that line, which is gonna be the closures, is that line there. And so I drew the line on the dress form, drew the line where the closures go there, line it up with a projector, and then we can go on the next one. I think that's the front. So that's what you're looking at right there. That's the front, and so you just like get the projector far enough or close enough away so it fits perfectly. And then I think the next picture is, oh, I didn't have a picture of the dress being made, so I shot some video of it, and there it is. And so, yeah, I have kind of like a random leaf pattern behind it, and then that is like the main pattern in the front, which is the problem I solved with that. And I think the next picture is actually, there's a picture of them in the forms getting a first layer of silicone there. So it's a lot of work to make life-size sculptures to turn into dresses. And I think the next, here's that one on the runway, and the next one is the other version. And let's stop right there for a second. And that's another version of this. And so another problem I was having when I was making this collection was I just don't have enough time to make these things, because the you know, sculpting that life-size dress out of clay takes forever. And so basically I broke it down to, I'm gonna make 3 iterations, 3 dresses, and each dress will have 3 iterations, so that's 9, and then I made a 10th one out of, I like to make one piece out of kind of remnants and stuff, and use that, and that kind of like attributes to the cohesion as well. But I ended up having 9, so like that's another iteration of that one. So yeah, and as I said, you can always use that work that you do when you're feeling like you should be doing something else, but you're doing this because it's fun and you enjoy it and it's totally stress relieving. You can use that work in your kind of stressful work, you know, and you can incorporate it, and it totally works, you know. It's and that's kind of like the active, you know, result of you kind of trusting your subconscious to do that work when you're actually like not doing anything, if that makes sense. And so my next little video is an example of some of the music I came up with when I was like, you know, thinking about, you know, just whatever. And then I also like to just like do some video editing, and that's another thing I don't really super care about anybody liking it or not. But it's helpful because a lot of these things you can use in your, you know, whatever you want to call it, marketing, social media, whatever. But you can use all of that stuff in there, and in the end, it does become kind of important. So the next is kind of a little 1 minute, it's not very long, 1 minute video segment, and this has some music that I had made. So I'm just gonna let that play. This is some behind the scenes of this show. That was that. Thanks. Thank you. And then I was going to wrap this up with something else that I've been kind of realizing about the creative process recently, and this whole concept of, it's like, I don't know how to describe it, but you know, it's something you can't touch or feel or understand as far as like, how does your subconscious work? How does your surroundings work? How is it incorporated into your life? And it's like a reality. It's just happening, whether you understand it's happening or not, you know? And so there's always things that are showing you that you're kind of like on the right path. You're going the right direction. And a lot of times we don't even see it. And I'm realizing that personally, that sometimes when you pay attention, it's like, wait, yeah, you know. I'll give you an example because that's kind of like weird. So a long time ago, I guess years ago, I was listening to this music by some DJ I really liked, and he incorporated this old like 15th century song, like an old poem. And it's like, that's really cool because it's like super old school. They were playing it on zithers or something. And then hearing the lyrics and like not really paying attention to the lyrics too much because I like the song and not really listening to it too intently. Okay, and then fast forward to, you know, a couple months ago, and I was helping my dad. He was like doing this like purge of books, all the books he wasn't reading, and literally there were boxes and boxes of these things that were like giving away or taking to the thrift store or whatever. And so I'm carrying all these books, packing them in boxes. I mean, literally there's tons of them. And then I like just grabbed one of these books, okay? I'm just grabbing this book, and I opened it, I seriously just opened it up and looked down, and there was that poem of that song. The actual words I remember now, because like, what the world? And it is something where it's like, essentially it's like telling you not to worry about stuff. And I'll try to remember it. It's like old English stuff, but it's essentially, I'm trying to remember now. So it goes, for every ailment under the sun, there is a remedy or there is none. If there is one, try to find it. If there is none, never mind it. And so it made sense to me personally, like that, wait, this stuff is happening. And it's like, and then just recently I was having kind of a downer time, like, and I'm like, boy, this is lame. I should be doing something cool. And I happened to be watching like YouTube, and all right, and I saw, wait, this is like some catwalk documentary from the 90s, from like 1995. And I remember this is when, in the 90s, was when this is before I was doing any fashion or anything, but I was interested in it. And I remember it was a time when I was like super self-confident, you know, when you're super young, like I can do anything and I'm better at everything than anybody else. You know what, yeah, let me at them. You know, I don't feel like that anymore, but it's great to see something. It's almost like hearing a song that reminds me of how things were back when you're younger. I watched this video and it was like so inspirational to me because I'd never seen this video before. And it was just like this really simple documentary, and it followed this model, Christy Turlington, around her shows she was doing. And, you know, I got to see like Galliano when he was first starting, backstage stuff, all backstage stuff, and like Versace and Lagerfeld, you know, way back in the 90s, and all this stuff, and it totally like made me feel like, you know, gave me that connection. And I totally felt like uplifted by that. And I was like, that's cool. At the same time, I was cleaning my studio, which I haven't done in like 4 years. I have like 4 seasons worth of piled up stuff, taking me forever. In addition to that, I was cleaning out all my, you know how you collect stuff from, you know, your life that you don't want to dump? I had this whole box of collage stuff. And I mean, anyways, when I was done, I was like sweeping up the last things. And stuff just couldn't get swept up because, you know, little tiny pieces of paper, they don't come up with your broom. They just stay there and your broom just goes over the top of it. Anyways, I found one tiny, tiny thing. I picked it up and it was like from one of my collage boxes, and it was like a picture of like Christy Turlington, a runway shot from one of those shows. And for me, it's like, is that a coincidence? You know what I mean? I mean, all these things kind of like just make sense after a while to me. And then you realize, you know, how many of these things are happening all the time, kind of like reaffirming things. And it's not some like kind of weird, it's actual things that are happening, you know. And a lot of people would say, well, those are all just coincidences. And I'm like, well, that's a pretty big one, you know. They come at times when you need them, you know what I mean? And a lot of times I find that I'm so focused on the problem that I don't see it. And I don't know, it's really encouraging to me. And that was pretty much my last one, except, my last point really, I think I keep digressing, but for people who are like in those down times and feeling like I'm not accomplishing anything, I'm like, I've been 2 months doing nothing, you know what I mean? Why am I even here, you know? And another thing I really realized, I'm not gonna get into it too much, I'm just gonna say it, but I think just being alive is an accomplishment, you know what I mean? It's like, it's super huge. And a lot of people don't realize that because they got all this work that they need to be doing, and they're not doing it, and they're feeling depressed, and they're feeling like, I can't do anything. Whoa, what am I doing? I guess I'll just go do telemarketing or something, you know. But the thing is, you know, just being alive at any point is a big deal. And I don't know. I mean, it's hard to express that, and it's like, do you understand this? Do you, you know? And it's like, nah, but that is like kind of like my final thing. So trust yourself, trust your subconscious, you know, and know that your subconscious is like trusting you to do the work when the time comes, and know how to get those first steps going, and then just, you know, it sounds corny to say believe in yourself. So yeah, just understand that just being yourself and being here and being alive is like it's like one of the most important things that has happened. I don't know. So there you go. Thanks.